Let's talk about how to compare things in Russian, how to say that something is newer, more interesting, or more boring than something else. There's more than one way to express this, so we'll break the topic down into a couple of short videos. And in this one, we'll learn what's called the simple comparative. And in a lot of ways, it really is simple. Let's start with a few examples. Этот мобильник новее. Эта книга скучнее. Это письмо интереснее. Мои студенты умнее. To get these forms, we're just taking the adjectives новый, скучная, интересная, умная, and replacing the endings with ye. Notice how with short words, the stress normally shifts to the ye ending. So new is новый, but newer is новее. Скучный, but скучнее, with the stress on the ending. For adjectives with 3 or more syllables, the stress usually doesn't change. For example, интересный, интереснее. Though there is one important exception, холодный, холоднее, with the stress on the ending, even though холодный has 3 syllables. Let's go back to these examples. You may have already noticed one really nice thing about these forms. The ending stays the same, no matter what gender we have, and no matter whether it's singular or plural. So we can use masculine nouns like мобильник, or feminine noun like книга, or neuter or even plural, but there's always that same ending in ye. So the endings don't change for gender. What about case? There's more good news. Forms like новее, скучнее don't change for case either. So there's no need to worry about genitive or dative endings and so on. There's actually an important reason for this. You'll only see these forms in the predicate. That is, in all these sentences where we're saying that something or someone was, is, or will be more beautiful, interesting, or whatever. Now, since they're modifying the subject of the sentence, it makes sense that we don't need to worry about case endings. Now, that does mean that to say things like, I bought a newer phone, or she's reading a more interesting book, or this is a more boring course, you'll want to avoid using these simple comparative forms, because you don't want to put them directly before the noun. For that, we'll need a different kind of construction that we'll cover in another video. And one last point to keep in mind is that there are also some adjectives that don't quite fit this pattern. Often you'll see a change in the stem and a slightly different type of ending for the comparative, but we'll cover those in detail in another video. Summing up, to compare things, we'll often use the simple comparative forms. We call them simple because they're made up of only one word, and the ye ending never changes, not even for gender or case or number. We use these simple forms only in the predicate, that is, to say that something was, is, or will be newer, colder, or nicer. And in other videos, we'll cover some irregular simple comparatives, how to express then, and also how to express a comparative adjective right before a noun.